May the God of an unchanging hand bless the words, the thoughts, the reflections, and laments of our time together. Amen. I have a friend who is a lot like me. My friend and I are both Black men in our 30s. We are both assistant professors. We both completed PhDs in religion. We're about the same height. We have a similar build, similar complexion. We both have a lot of hair on our heads, corrective lenses on our eyes, and beards on our faces. We're both introverts and former teenage preachers. If you can believe it, we were even born on the same day of the same year. I kid you not. And we did not meet until we were grown men beginning our academic journeys in our doctoral programs. And when we met and began to talk and realized all of the things we had in common, it was the wildest experience you can imagine. But here's what really got my attention. Each time we have had to teach this fall, we both wore all Black. Now, we didn't plan this, it just happened. And it didn't dawn on me until he mentioned something about it on social media. And I said, I don't know what's happening in the hive mind or if we have that twins separated at birth kind of thing going on, but every day that I've taught this academic semester, I just happen to be in all Black. Now, anybody who knows me knows I'm not afraid of colors. And when I noticed this, I had to ask myself, what is it about all Black? But for some reason, Black has been my go-to uniform the past few weeks. Now, in popular culture, Black has a lot of connotations. It's the uniform of spies and criminals. It's the color of doom and gloom, of grief and sadness. It's the color of mourning and madness. It is what people wear when they are up to no good and don't want to be seen. Blackness, whether we mean just a color or a racial identity or any other designation, has certain connotations in the world. But when I think of the color Black, I think of things like Black Power. I think of the Black Panthers. I think of committed, convicted people who are fighting for social equity and political power. And I think of folks who are facing overwhelming odds with a united front. I think about how the color Black absorbs all the wavelengths of light, how it transforms that light energy into heat energy. For me, Black isn't just a color, it's an attitude, it's an energy, it's a state of being. And I don't wear Black because I've come to do battle with my students. I put on Black because I'm facing the world. Black has become my insulation, a source of strength, a defense against principalities and powers, against systems and structures that actively militate against my life and well-being. See, there are times when you can't turn away from your trouble. There are times when you can't get over it, get under it, or get around it. No, you've got to face what's in front of you. And something about putting on Black puts me in the mind to face all that is in front of me. Not just today, not just this moment, but every day. The text today does not turn away from trouble. No, it leans into it. It's the third of what biblical scholars call the servant songs. And it reads like an individual speaking, but I believe the power in this text really comes from understanding it as a model for collective response to corporate realities. In the text, the Lord has not given the servant an escape hatch. The Lord has given the servant tools for sustaining. The Lord has given what? The tongue of a teacher to sustain the weary with a word. But we ought to ask, why are the people weary? They're weary because they're living in exile. Exile for the children of Israel was a multi-layered tragedy. It meant separation from ancestral lands. It meant being culturally and socially uprooted. It meant reckoning with the problem of theodicy, how I make sense of a divine and good God in the face of profound evil. But maybe the greatest threat to the people was despair. Despair. It's the complete loss or absence of hope. Despair. It is what happens when you have given up and given in. And despair sounds a lot like it applies to our present conditions. When folks are dying in heat waves and drowning in floods. When folks are gasping for breath against an evolving virus. When people try to scratch out a meager life without a living wage. The list goes on, and the longer you live under conditions of despair, the harder it is to bounce back. Something happens to you internally. Your resilience crumbles over time because you start to internalize the belief that the way things are is the only way they can and will ever be. Despair turns us away from the world and into ourselves, drags us into a pit so deep we can't see, hear, or imagine another reality. Despair is the description of the broken heart and the broken spirit. But Isaiah 50 is an antidote to despair. It's a reminder that we do not control what we face. We simply choose how we are going to face it. The myth of Sisyphus tells us of a man who was condemned to push a rock up a hill endlessly over and over again. And at the end of every day, that rock would roll back down the hill. But the point of the story was not for Sisyphus to escape pushing the rock. The question is, what does your approach to the impossible task do to transform your interior world? It begins with our speech. Any wise teacher understands the power of your words. You have the power to describe a new reality. You have the power to make new ideas and concepts acceptable and accessible. You have the power to declare a syllabus, a contract, a bond, a connection with your students that says, this is what is possible, this is what is expected, this is how it gets done. But the servant in the text is not just a speaker. See, the servant knows how to listen too. And you know what's frustrating? When people's words to you make it abundantly clear that they are not listening. See, if good words were enough, we could just preach and fuss and virtue signal our way through anything. But what I speak is informed by what I have heard. Even a child learns language by repeating what they have heard. And I cannot speak to despair if I have not heard God. I can't give a word to the weary if I have not heard their plight. I can't truly preach a gospel I have not internalized and integrated, because something is out of whack, something is out of alignment. People notice the dissonance when your words and your actions do not seem to line up the way you said they did. We need internal fortitude to wrestle with external troubles. You know, one of my Detroit favorites, Funkadelic, said it like this. They said, you know, free your mind and your body will follow. Now, that ain't quite how they said it, but because I understand the power of words and context, just understand when your interior gets right, the exterior starts to follow along. You get what I'm saying? Sister Lauren Hill would have put it this way: how you gonna win if you ain't right within? We gotta get our words and our ears in order. It ain't just what I say, it's what I hear. I gotta have sense enough, wisdom enough, knowledge enough to know I can't let myself meditate on and take in every single thing, because it starts to transform what comes out of me. I gotta know when somebody is bringing an encouraging word and when they're bringing a discouraging gossip. I gotta know when folks say the right things but do the wrong ones, and I need to remove myself from the kind of corrupt communication that damages my ability to withstand what is coming. See, some folks talk a good game, but they live on the sidelines. And there are some folk who haven't been through enough or been through the kinds of things they need to understand where I'm really coming from. It sounds good, it sounds nice, but if you haven't really heard my cry, if you haven't really seen my position, you may not be qualified to speak to the particularity of what I'm going through. Maybe you could put it in a self-help book. Maybe you could put it in a motivational speech, but the people in this text do not need self-help or motivational speech. What they need is a word to their weariness. You've heard it said, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, which means I can only reword and reimagine reality when I have the inner capacity to do so. The inner resources, the inner strength, the daily renewal of my inner life impacts the daily posture of my outer life. And this is what I love about the text. It shows us this subtle transition from the renewal of the internal life to the posture of the external life. The servant says, I set my face like a flint, like a rock. Have you ever figured out or really looked at what flint is and what it does? Flint is a hard stone, a natural mineral. Flint was used to make weapons and tools during the Stone Age, but importantly, flint too was used to strike a spark to create a fire. There's something here to setting your face like a flint. It is not in the text an admission that nothing will ever happen, that no enemies will come to us, that there will not be challenges and circumstances to overcome. Rather, it is an admission that I have set myself up to face and respond to this in a way, and if you come at me, you've got to deal with me. To set your face as a flint is to say, I might lose this battle, but I won't be an easy victory. It's to say, when you come against me, expect there to be sparks. Yes. I can be like the rock. Why? Because I've invested my hope and my faith in one who has anchored me, one who has remained with me. And this is the thing to understand. When you are in circumstances that do not seem to make sense, that seem impossible, that seem completely unfathomable, you've got to understand that faith is not about rational thinking. It's not to say it's utterly irrational. It's not to say toss aside your degrees, your knowledge, your learning. Rather, it's to say that in order to believe in something beyond the scope of what you can see and feel and measure, faith moves beyond the empirical. It says, I know what things look like. Let me tell you what I believe things can be like. See, I come from the kind of folk who knew about a God of weary years. The kind of folk who growing up, I would hear my grandparents and other elders in my church sing songs like the psalmist said, hear my cry, O Lord. Attend unto my prayer. From the ends of the earth will I cry unto thee, and when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. See, you've got to set yourself up like a rock because you are emulating the rock of our salvation. The rock on which we stand, the rock on which we are firmly rooted and grounded. You want a good foundation, you better find some rock. And when I look at this text through the lens of experience, through the lens of life, through the lens of transformative hope, here's the conclusion I come to. That God does not promise us ease and comfort at every step. What God does give us is a template for enduring until the world can be transformed. I told my students, and one of them, Brother Hank, reminds me often this, we live in this challenge between the world that is and the world that ought to be. And somewhere between is and ought, we've got life that needs living. We've got problems that need challenging. We've got obstacles that need overcoming. So what am I going to do in the in-between when my is and my ought don't quite line up? I've learned to be like the rock. I've learned that sometimes I got to adjust my attitude to set my altitude. I learned that sometimes, you know, when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you do good. And when you do good, your mind begins to transform. So you know what? In your life, maybe it's not wearing all black. Maybe it's carrying that favorite poem in your back pocket. Maybe it's wearing the flowers in your hair. Maybe it's something as simple as wearing that familiar fragrance, carrying that treasured memento, that good luck charm. I don't know, whatever it is, there's something that informs your internal world and transforms the way you move in this external life. This is my word to the weary. It won't always be easy. It won't always be comfortable. But my God, I believe it is possible. Yes. And I've learned that sometimes our healing is just a new wound with better intentions. It's not to say we will never be cut, we will never be bruised, we will never be battered. But I believe the God who is a rock teaches us to set ourselves against this world, against its evil, with a mindset and a belief that yes, things can change, things will change, and God's word to the weary is never in vain. God bless you.